Hey everybody, hoping a few more people jump on, but this is Mike Tatarski in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, doing my weekly update of the latest from Vietnam. So that top image from my weekly newsletter that I send out via Substack, it's free. If you just Google Vietnam Weekly Newsletter, it should be the first result. You can sign up there, send it out every Friday morning, Vietnam time. So Thursday evening in the US. And then there's a couple pictures I've taken on the streets here in Ho Chi Minh City of just people in masks and that sort of thing. I guess I'll show my face now. Yeah, so the big news this week, as you can see from the title, is that we've had a return of community transmission of COVID-19 right here in Ho Chi Minh City for the first time in 88 days. So we were just about to hit 3 months with no known community transmission. And then what's today? Thursday. So Monday night they announced a new case. Bit of a complex one, but it seems like it's under control so far. So a Vietnam Airlines flight attendant had returned to Vietnam from Japan on a flight for work. And he did a quarantine for 4 days, had tested negative for twice, sent to home isolation. But he allowed 3 people to visit him while in home isolation. Now we found out later actually left to have lunch somewhere, also go to university class in another part of the city. And one of the 3 people who visited him caught coronavirus from the flight attendant, and then he passed it on to 2 other people. So as we've seen here in Vietnam, throughout the pandemic, they did aggressive contact tracing immediately, identifying, I think it was around 2,000 people. There were, F1 and F2 level contacts of these individuals. Several universities stopped in-person classes for the week. I think about 170,000 students were impacted by that. Since it gives you a bit of a sense of how seriously they take coronavirus here, that there was in total 3 new cases in the community, and they shut down in-person class and 70,000 students for 4 days and traced and tested around 2,000 people. And so far there have been no further positive tests. So it's been initially people were concerned because the second case, he kind of traveled all over the city, taught at a couple of English centers, went to a mall, went to a cafe, went to his gym. So there was concern about who else might have gotten it from him, but thus far only 2 other cases have appeared. So just to do a reset, since more people are coming on, I'm Mike Tatarski, a journalist based in Ho Chi Minh City here on HAPS. If you're watching from Reddit or Twitter or some other program, this is being broadcast through HAPS. You can find this on there and a lot of other journalists doing independent videos. Doing just an update on the week in news here in Vietnam, which has been dominated by the first case of community transmission of the coronavirus in 88 days. I'm sure if you're watching from the US or a number of other countries, that might be kind of astonishing that we had gone almost 3 months without any community cases, but that's how effective the response here has been. If anyone has any questions or anything about how things are going in Vietnam, how they've handled it here, feel free to drop a comment. I'll answer. Again, if you're watching through Reddit or something like that, if you go to haps.tv, you can find this and put in your comments there. You can also subscribe to support my journalism on here. But yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully getting some good questions. But just start on the news. So on Monday night, the Ministry of Health announced a new coronavirus case, community transmission here in Ho Chi Minh City for the first time in almost 3 months. That's nationwide, not just here in the city. It started with a Vietnam Airlines flight attendant who returned from Japan, did 4 days of quarantine, tested negative twice, and then was allowed to go to home isolation. But he screwed up pretty badly, let 3 people visit him at home, and also, for some reason, went out into the city at least once. And one of the friends who visited him caught virus as well. then passed it on to two people, his 1-year-old nephew and a 28-year-old student at the English center he works at. This kicked off massive contact tracing. They found, I think, around 2,000 first and second level contacts, all of whom so far have come back negative, which is great news. And the flight attendant is facing potentially jail time now for breaking his home quarantine. This hasn't been used on anybody yet, but they might charge him with, I think it was spreading infectious diseases or an infectious disease to humans, and could carry a jail term of up to 12 years. So the police have started an investigation. They're going to bring charges against him, and this would be the first time anyone has been charged so seriously. But they clearly want to make an example of this guy who really, really screwed up. It's, personal responsibility has been a big part of Vietnam's success so far with the pandemic, and this guy did not do a very good job of displaying that. But all this being said, life here in the city has carried on pretty normally. They've kind of sealed off a couple of very small areas where those cases were based, or if one of the cases visited a business, they would close it down. But my neighborhood has been fine. Going to work has been normal. Businesses are still open. So there's no talk of, especially now that we're seeing most people come back negative in the contact tracing, there was never any talk of any kind of widespread shutdowns or anything like that. But they have actually stopped flights coming into the country. So it's already been heavily restricted to experts and foreign investors and that sort of thing. But it sounds like basically all international flights coming in are going to be shut down, even the ones bringing back Vietnamese citizens, the special repatriation flights that have brought back tens of thousands of Vietnamese from around the world in the last few months. 33 more of those have been scheduled over the next month, and they are postponing those for now until they make sure that this little cluster is under control, which I feel at this point pretty confident that it is under control and will stay that way. But again, this flight attendant is he screwed up, and sounds like he's going to pay the legal consequences. And unfortunately, there has been a little bit of ugliness where people are harassing Vietnam Airlines employees in the streets. Apparently, the Vietnam Airlines employee was stopped on their motorbike at a red light in their uniform, and somebody stubbed out a lit cigarette on them, which is obviously pretty horrendous. So you don't want to see that. That is unfortunate, but overall, the response to this has been extremely effective, as Vietnam's response has been throughout this pandemic so far. Just to give a sense of how effective. So right now, since January, when this started, Vietnam has had 1,361 cases total, with 35 deaths. And of those cases, only 114 are active. And many of those at this point, I think the majority by now, have been people entering the country, going straight into quarantine for 14 days and testing positive in quarantine. So, not posing any risk to the community, as long as they don't leave like the flight attendant did. But I think they'll be changing the regulations probably about letting people do home isolation now, given what's happened. But yeah, feel free. Again, I'll do a quick reset of who I am. So I'm Mike Tatarsky, journalist here on HAPS, talking about the news from the week. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. I'm happy to address them, and it can be about the pandemic in Vietnam, just anything, any thoughts you have, what life is like here, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, following the news this week about this outbreak and how aggressively they've tackled it, and then reading about how things are going in the U.S., for example, is it's like being in a different universe. There's so many cases over there every day, and it seems like little is being done. Whereas here, we get one case of community transmission, and it's all hands on deck. Track down as many people as possible who may have been exposed, close and clean the businesses they visited, shut down flights, that sort of thing. Some people may think that's an overreaction, but because of this, daily life is pretty normal. We can go to restaurants, we can go to bars, we can go to the cinema. fly around domestically and travel without much concern about safety. I mean, still wearing masks just out of precaution, but by and large, for a while now, with a couple of exceptions, life has been pretty normal here, and the economy is growing. So it's a real shame to see how poorly this has gone and is going in other parts of the world still. I also just wanted to mention that I write a weekly newsletter about Vietnam called, as you can see on the bottom there, Vietnam Weekly on Substack. It's free to sign up. Send it out every Friday morning Vietnam time. Covers some of what I talk about on here, but more. So kind of, big international stories related to Vietnam, some local stuff that you wouldn't know about if you weren't paying really close attention. And I like to try to include some photography as well from time to time. So if you want to learn more about Vietnam, I invite you to sign up. If you just Google Vietnam Weekly Substack, it'll come up, or Vietnam Weekly newsletter, and you can subscribe for free. Also happy to take any questions from anybody. Thoughts on this new outbreak, very limited outbreak right now. Vietnam's overall handling of the pandemic, life here, you name it. Happy to answer questions anyone may have. Oh, and also this is not COVID related, but the Vietnamese government earlier this week finally officially congratulated Joe Biden on winning the U.S. presidential election. They were taking their time on that just out of an abundance of caution. I think they may have been among the last countries to make it official, but they sent their congratulations to Joe Biden earlier in the week, and U.S.-Vietnam relationship should continue to be pretty good, I would think, once Biden takes over in January. Just waiting to see if we get any questions. Again, I'm broadcasting from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, the country's biggest city and commercial center, where we've had a thus far highly contained coronavirus outbreak. That started on Sunday and Monday. So grew to 4 cases, which I know many countries would consider a blessing to only have that number, but was a pretty big deal here because we had gone almost 3 months, without any community transmission. But it looks like they've gotten a handle on it really fast, as they have basically throughout this year when it comes to the coronavirus. So still feeling confident here, very safe, certainly lucky to be in Vietnam at this time. And I'll sign off in a minute, but let me know if there's any questions about Vietnam, pandemic here, the response, anything else Vietnam related. Happy to chat with viewers. Somebody asked, do most people wear disposable masks there or cloth masks? Good question. It's a mix. I mean, I see a pretty healthy amount of kind of the surgical masks, but I think the reusable ones are getting more popular. I mean, I have probably about a dozen reusable cloth masks at this point that I kind of cycle through to make sure I always have a clean one ready. So I think, the surgical ones, I guess, would be considered disposable. Those, like, again, pretty common, but lots of cloth. I mean, even before this, a lot of people wore masks because of air pollution. So they were already fairly common, and those tend to be cloth, reusable. So I would say cloth is the most common here overall. But that is one thing. So mask wearing has not been controversial at all here. There's been no debate. People, again, a lot of people were already wearing them fairly regularly before this. I wore one when I drove my motorbike each day. And yeah, so there's not been any debate about whether or not people should be wearing masks. It's just been done, and it's required when you fly domestically or on public transportation or take a bus to travel or something like that. But yeah, let's do one final reset. Mike Tatarsky, a journalist based in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, broadcasting on HAPS about the week in news from Vietnam, which has been dominated by COVID, coronavirus. Yeah, yeah. A lot of other places did wear masks before COVID, so it's pretty easy adjustment. Um, so yeah, back where this started. So on Monday night, the Ministry of Health announced a new case of community transmission of the virus here in Ho Chi Minh City. It had been the first locally transmitted case nationwide in 88 days, so almost 3 months, which almost anywhere else in the world would be pretty incredible. But they've stamped it out pretty quickly. There were 2 other cases were detected on Tuesday, but nothing since then. So thus far, it's been limited to just 4 people. There's been, widespread contact tracing and testing, so widespread that a bunch of universities canceled in-person classes this week. So I think about 170,000 students in the city ended up, learning from home. Incoming flights have been suspended. International flights, domestic is still fine until they make sure that this is beaten. And it seems like it will be in pretty short order. I'm feeling pretty confident about that. The more we learn about more negative test results. But the flight attendant, Vietnam Airlines flight attendant who was responsible for spreading it initially, is potentially going to face jail time, which is obviously incredibly serious. And police here have started an investigation. They're expected to bring charges against him. And yeah. And yeah, someone said, I think all the US is now a hotspot. 4 cases sucks, but it's pretty amazing. Yeah, agreed. I mean, reading the news, I'm American, if you can't tell from my accent. So reading the news out of the States every morning is incredibly depressing. All my friends and family there are bored, like I'm sure a lot of other viewers in the US are. Yeah, so 4 cases is nothing in comparison, but was taken very seriously, and officials made sure it didn't go beyond that, and it seems like that's worked pretty effectively. And I mean, in total, since January, Vietnam has only had 1,361 known cases, most of whom have recovered. There were 35 deaths, and those were all in Da Nang, in a really serious outbreak there in July and August, focused on hospitals or centered in hospitals. But beyond that, there's been no deaths from the virus here. It's been really one of the world's best responses overall. I'm going to log off shortly if there aren't more questions. Again, this is coming from HAPS. If you go to the platform, you can see this and other people streaming. You can subscribe to my feed so you can check out further videos. Again, I'll boost my weekly newsletter. No, it's not an American flight attendant. He's Vietnamese, working for Vietnam Airlines. But he came back on a flight from Japan and either had the virus already or caught it while in quarantine. Yeah, someone said they can't imagine the U.S. putting people in jail for spreading it. I can't either. I'm sure there'd be all sorts of civil rights, legal issues with that. I mean, it is obviously a pretty harsh punishment, but that hasn't been done here yet. I should make that clear. There's been some fines for people posting disinformation and stuff like that, but nobody's been charged with something so serious that it may warrant jail time. But this is a pretty serious infraction, especially the part of him actually leaving home isolation and going to a restaurant, going to class. That's pretty irresponsible, to say the least. Yeah, in that case, I'm going to sign off. Starting to get a little late here. So that's, again, I'm Mike Tatarski from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Thanks everybody for watching and the good questions, and I'll see you guys next time.